You're listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by the National Association of Convenience Stores.
And welcome to Convenience Matters, which is brought to you by the National Association of Convenience Stores. My name is Jeff Leonard, and I'm with Max. Today we're going to be talking about healthy and what we can do to sell more healthy items in stores, bring more people interested in healthy items to stores, and anything related to that. And I'm joined by my co-host.
I'm John Eichberger with NACS and the Fuels Institute. And, you know, Jeff, we always start this off by saying convenience stores what fuel you and your car. Basically, anything that keeps you moving, we're there for you 24/7.
24/7. And today our guest is Hank Cardello. He is the Senior Fellow and Director of the Obesity Solutions Initiative at the Hudson Institute. And Hank, first off, welcome.
Well, thank you. Thanks for the invitation. Glad to be here.
And the reason we have Hank here today is you have an interesting history in looking at our industry, looking at packaged goods and whatnot. You have a book called Stuffed that looks at the issue of obesity. We have looked as a country at all sorts of quick solutions to obesity. I guess the first question is there a quick solution? And if not, how do we fix it in 20 seconds?
The short answer is no. There's no quick fix to this by any means. It's a very complex issue. It involves what consumers eat, what manufacturers produce, where products are displayed, etc. So a lot going on. I think the best way to approach this from an industry perspective is what can we do as an industry to market, display, sell products that are better for consumers and, more importantly, also good for the growth. This is not an either-or type of situation. We're now finding a very interesting time where it actually makes sense to sell better-for-you, healthier products, if you would, because they're the ones that are driving the growth.
You know, I'm glad you said that because a couple of years ago, Jeff, NACS started looking at the issue of healthier alternatives, more from a regulatory defensive standpoint. We saw the menu labeling regulations coming. The politically incorrect dubbed food police coming. And we really started thinking we need to figure out a way to highlight some of the healthier options we're selling, because we do sell them. We don't sell a lot of them, but they typically tend to be higher margin items too. So I love you're saying that we just need to make sure that we're offering these things because it is a growth market. And as a target, the healthier focused lifestyle demographic is a major target for this industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've examined not only convenience store market, we've looked at packaged goods companies, supermarket, restaurant trade. And the one thing that's a common denominator to all is that the growth is coming from lower calorie, better for you products. And in other words, if you don't carry these products and you don't get aggressively behind them, you actually get left behind. All right. And you will see declines or at least stagnation in your sales. And you referenced alternative, let's say alternative snacks as an example. If you look at the numbers specifically for the convenience store sector, we're seeing tremendous growth, sometimes double-digit growth coming from alternative snacks that consumers are now looking for. It doesn't mean they're walking away from the more tried and true traditional types of items, but they're looking to complement what they consume. And that's really where the growth opportunity is for your sector.
Yeah.
Now, how did you get into this space of looking at obesity initiatives? Where you are today, you're one of the foremost experts in talking about the issue, but you had a path that got here. Can you talk about what led you to where you are now?
Well, full disclosure, I come from the packaged goods company background, and at one point I actually ran a soft drink company for Cadbury Schweppes called Sunkist. And during the mid to late 90s, I did have my personal health crisis, where I basically hit the wall and didn't know what was wrong with me. They gave me a false diagnosis of leukemia, but I did make the proverbial promise that before I knew it was a false diagnosis, that I would commit myself to helping people live longer and healthier lives through food. And now that's how I got here. It's an interesting place to be between industry and the public health and regulatory community, where historically they've been at odds with each other. It's always a zero-sum game. Someone has to win, someone has to lose. And the role we're playing now through our work at the Hudson Institute is to serve as this middle builder, if you would, understanding industry, yet appreciating what needs to happen on the public health standpoint so that we can come up with mutually workable solutions that, again, companies have to grow, industries have to grow, and at the same time, we have to make progress because your customer is suffering from very high rates of obesity, which ultimately leads to diabetes and heart conditions and certain cancers. So you have to take care of your customer, but do it in a way that works for you. So that's where we play, and that's really our mission right now.
So your comment about the different stakeholders, I'm from the political world, 15 years lobbying for NACS, and you start seeing camps, and they don't get along very well. And so what we're doing NACS and the Fuels Institute is trying to bring those camps and the fuels arena together. So you mentioned that in the public health and the industry. How has the reception been as you've reached out to the competing factions, for lack of a better word, and have they been receptive, and are you seeing some progress in that?
Well, clearly those differences remain, I think, particularly at the extremes. From an advocacy or perhaps an activism perspective, there are several out there who just don't like big business, and they believe and treat the consumer as more of a victim, as if the consumer doesn't have a point of view. On the other hand, there are some intractable parties inside various industry sectors that aren't moving either. And what we found, there are some formulas that are taking shape right now that are actually showing a lot more progression. As an example, a number of the packaged goods companies came together in an initiative called the Healthy Weight Commitment Foundation. And as part of that, they made a commitment to pull out 1.5 trillion calories out of the food supply, but they did it in conjunction with Robert Wood Johnson Foundation, which is kind of the beacon, if you would, for the public health community. And lo and behold, after a few years, they had quadrupled the commitment. They took out 6.4 trillion calories. And, of course, it's good news not only for their businesses, because, again, we've showed that the lower calorie, better for you products are growing, but also this is a great step forward to help in reducing the calories that are on the street, which are the biggest contributors to obesity. You know, another arena that's proving to be successful is the First Lady's Partnership for a Healthier America. And in that, companies are making commitments center stage with First Lady to basically lower sugars or make healthier products more available in the various channels that they sell in. And we're finding that's proving to be very successful too. So again, there's a lot of progress that's being made on both sides. I wouldn't say we're all the way to bright yet. I think we need continued collaboration, continued commitments, and to try to keep the extreme voices at bay because they tend to be destructive rather than constructive, and we prefer to be constructive.
And I know the health community is after a while you go to a couple meetings and say, oh, I see that same person again. And so it is like any sort of industry, you start to see the same people over again. You start to develop deeper connections. And I've seen you, Hank, at so many meetings, and it's great. I'll be seeing you at a couple more in the next few months. But when you started to work with NACS, and we'll talk about what some of your findings were, when you would talk to other people and you would say, hey, I'm working on obesity solutions, I'm looking at the convenience space, has the perception changed over the last few years? Was it originally they would look at you and like they just sniffed sour milk, and now it's kind of like, you know what, I see a real future there, or I see that they're really moving the needle?
Well, I've never heard the sour milk analogy. However, I have seen a lot of progress. Several years ago, around 2008, I actually co-chaired with Barry Popkin at University of North Carolina in Chapel Hill an initiative to pull in industry with some of the obesity research scholars. And that was really the first attempt to try to bring some groups together. And quite frankly, it turned out to be a little bit premature. It wasn't quite ripe enough yet for that kind of for progress to be made from those kind of convenings. I've seen major steps. Again, the combination of Healthy Weight Commitment, Partnership for Healthier America, being led by the packaged goods companies because they're seeing the light. They're seeing again that the growth is there. And I'm hopeful that that mentality is spreading throughout the other sectors because, again, their bottom line is the bottom line. And that is they are responsible to growing their businesses. And they've recognized that if they stay with the tried and true, so to speak, they will not be growing at the kind of rates that they need. And that's why this is important. Again, classic win-win. We thought it used to be either or. It used to be healthier or traditional. No. Now we're at the point where healthier means better for business. And it's a good place to be because we have both parties on the same page.
So when you use the term healthier, what are your primary criteria in determining if something is a healthier option?
Well, it's a great question. There's very difficult definitions for healthier. We've focused on a definition that we call, quote, lower calorie, which encompasses some products that are either real or perceived better for you. And it's a very vague definition because consumers really define it in their own sphere. There's no hardcore definition. And sometimes even lower calorie constitutes or communicates diet to some people, and that's not what we're talking about here. These are the versions. So what could be examples of better for you? Well, it could be the product itself, like some of the snacks that are out there, that have more natural ingredients or, they're less indulgent. But also it could mean smaller portion sizes. There's certain categories, let's say the more indulgent categories, whether it's confections or sodas, etc. They are what they are. So how do you make those products better? I think Coca-Cola learned years ago that you don't mess with the formula, as they learned from New Coke. So what else can you do? Well, you can sell it in smaller sizes. And interestingly, that particular item is now being sold in a smaller 7.5-ounce can, and it's growing double digits, as an example. So they're, again, finding that the old sacred cows can grow in this environment, but you have to put them in, let's say, a better format if the product is what it is, or in the case of the term is used sometimes alternative, whether it's snacking, alternative beverages, et cetera. Again, that's a catch-all type of phrase. But nevertheless, it does capture what consumers have in their mind as being better for them. And then, of course, fruits, vegetables, et cetera, by all means, are part of that category. And we are seeing those particular categories starting to grow now, even after decades of stagnating. So
that's kind of your discussion of smaller portion sizes kind of indicates maybe a shift in consumer behavior, because in your book you talk about the competition for big, how everybody had to outbig the other one because the consumer had perceived value in larger portions for a greater deal. But if we're seeing significant growth in smaller portion size, is there a shift in consumer mindset, or is it a segment of the consumers that are shifting?
Yeah, it's a great question because all consumers are not created equal.
Right.
We've looked at quite a bit of segmentation relative to this health and wellness issue. And we find, oversimplifying, there are those who are extremely walking the talk. They, non-GMO, everything has to be pure. But don't take away my chocolate, by the way. But nevertheless, they want it perfect. They want it organic, natural, et cetera. They might be up to 20% of the population, with the more extreme element there, maybe 3 or 4%. Then you have this other end of the spectrum, which are the more indulgent. We call them eat, drink, and be merries, which speak for themselves, where don't mess with it. I like it. I'm done. The minute you lectured to me about eating healthier, I'm going to order a double monster thick burger with extra bacon and chili on top of it. The real opportunity is this middling group that we call a group looking for a better-for-you version, as we just discussed. So they don't want alfalfa sprouts. They don't want tofu. They want a better Lunchables type of product. They want a better beverage that perhaps has a little less sugar for their kids. They want to eat with the same desire for taste and convenience, but they're not willing to consume the kind of quantity. So you see this spectrum here. It's not either or. However, driving this change to smaller sizes are our initial group and this better for you group. And I see that as a trend. It's not just a fad that's just popping up. It's here with us now. And the good news is some of the larger companies are now finding these smaller sizes actually capture the same profit margins as the larger size. It used to be you had to sell more because you made more per unit. All right. Can you still do that? Yes. The bad news is consumers don't really want those kind of quantities, or at least migrating away from the mega quantities towards the smaller, more reasonable quantities.
And I think we're seeing that. I think that consumers are saying, I'm willing to pay more. If you look at trends over the past year, retail overall, not just convenience stores, but overall goods, I think was roughly flat or maybe a little bit disappointing over the holidays. It didn't meet expectations. The two industries that did well last year were travel and the restaurants. And with the restaurants in particular, it wasn't because they were increasing prices. It was because people were thinking, you know what, I don't need as much stuff. I want some experiences. I want to feel good. And buying something that's either going to sit on a shelf or do something, maybe doesn't feel as good as me rewarding myself with a food I want or an experience or a meal. So I think that also fits into the opportunity that we have, whether in convenience stores or broader, to bring items to them that aren't necessarily on price alone, but there's some other variables, taste, experience, surprise, the whole element of food trucks, where 20 years ago, food trucks were roach coaches. And the idea of ethnic food was largely pizza or Chinese. People want to find interesting experiences, and we see that with all the TV shows now.
Well, I think you used a key word there, and this is the era for opportunity for this sector. That's the good news because, again, it used to be viewed as, gee, if we're moving in a healthier direction, can we really play in this game? And we don't see that. We see huge opportunity for convenience stores, not only to retain their current core customers, all right, because they're important to the business, but how to best capture this better for you customer that is frequenting the convenience stores, is spending as much or more than the core customer. In fact, they are more interested in capturing and purchasing a broader array of products. So there's a win-win here, again, to keep the core plus to capture the growth. And that's, to me, very encouraging for the entire industry.
Yeah, you call this segment fence sitters. And probably most of the people listening will identify themselves as that. It's the consumer that one day may want something very healthy and the other day may want something, as you use the phrase, traditional. They don't necessarily breathe one specific scenario all the time. And you were saying that fence sitters are something like 3 out of every 10 people. And that is the true opportunity, or I think it's even 4 out of 10. I think it was 38%. Of all consumers in our channel. And you were focusing that the 3 big opportunities for convenience stores are selling by day part, telling these fence sitters that we have these products because most of them aren't aware, at least according to surveys. And the third part is appealing to moms with kids that come into stores and helping guide them. So let's take apart them individually. The first recommendation that you have is day parts. And can you talk about where convenience stores fit in as opportunities to sell healthy items by day part?
Well, what we saw very specifically is that when you look at the breakfast day part, first of all, it's growing. There's more and more people eating out, and the cereal folks are finding out that in the hard way, that many of their customers are purchasing breakfast out of the home right now. We also learned that time of day, from a consumer perception, was the time of day that they're more predisposed to eating more nutritious foods, eating more in a healthy fashion. Not necessarily, again, all the way to bright, but they're more conscious of it earlier in the day. So our assessment was that from a convenience store perspective, there was a tremendous opportunity to incorporate on your food service side some quick on-the-go kinds of items that are better for you that people can take out. Also, when you look at the shelves, again, there's a lot of prepackaged sweets, a very indulgent type of breakfast items. And again, there is clearly a market for that. But what you may be leaving behind are those folks who want something a little bit better than that. So there's a huge opportunity to incorporate other items during that day part to attract people into your stores, to run with breakfast items, hand-holdable types of items that are a little healthier. And again, not tofu, just want something a little bit better for you, because those people otherwise will run down the street to McDonald's or someplace like that and grab it. They're on the go. They don't have these people, these fence sitters, as you just mentioned, are very time pressed, and they have kids, and they're stressed, and they're working hard. And you know what? They have 20 minutes for dinner, for that matter. Eating is a luxury. It's not a 2.5-hour Epicurean delight or festival every day. It's very minimal in terms of time. So you can help them. You're right at the street level. They can pop in and out. You have a major advantage over supermarkets in this arena. And I think also relative to restaurants, which typically don't have better for you types of offerings. So a tremendous opportunity.
And that's the key takeaway, I think, Jeff, is we always say convenience stores, we don't sell products, we sell time. We give customers back time. And when you mentioned in your book about a lot of the challenges we've encountered the last 3 or 4 decades was because of two earning families. Both mom and dad are working. They don't have time to cook. Most people don't have time to cook. And so that on the go, that drop in, grab something, for our channel of trade, they're coming to our stores anyway to fuel up their car or pick up some other stuff. If we have these better for you options that the families can then grab and bring home and feel good about what they're giving to their families, we have a huge competitive advantage there. And if they are higher margin items, which they likely are, great opportunity for profitability.
Yeah, I find breakfast to be very interesting because this is not John and I's experience, but a lot of people, the day beats on you. The day just goes downhill.
Ours is uplifting all the time.
Yeah, the peak is when we go to bed, and then another peak starts. But for a lot of people, the day you're very aspirational. You wake up, I'm going to change today. And then things happen, time stresses, etc. And then by dinner, it's less about healthy and it's more about, boy, I really need that cheeseburger and a beer. And so I think breakfast is a huge opportunity for retailers because that's when people are most aspirational related to healthy.
Absolutely. And your channel, again, offers that convenience. You mentioned the fence sitters before. One of the things about fence sitters is that oftentimes their biggest complaint is they want to eat a little better, but they can't find it. They can't find either in the stores or supermarkets they shop in, but also location-wise. There isn't a location nearby that they could run in and get something that they perceive as better for them. So again, convenience stores are well positioned just due to the fact that there's over 150,000 of them. And they're very prevalent, and I think that's a major competitive advantage the channel offers.
And that was your second recommendation, to just tell people, because when you survey people, they say, I don't know where to get healthy nearby. And what you're saying is whether it's at the gas pump, by directional, by menus, by advertisements, tell them that you have healthy because they're looking for it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's not just being there, it's helping them out once they are there. I mean, they're there, which is the good news. Now that they're in your venue, all right, how do you help them out? And it's important. Again, we're not suggesting that you have this major alfalfa sprout display as you walk in. Recall that a lot of your core business is going to basic items, but for these folks, they need some help. They need to, see the products that are better for you, all right? The alternative snacks, the alternative beverages need to be in front of them. And B, when you get them there, this is a crowd that's also hungry or hungrier for information, all right? They want to know what's going in the product. what's in there, what the ingredients are, etc. So they're a little more attuned into, if it has lower sugar or perhaps if it contains protein. That's a hot button lately. So you have to help them out a little bit at the point of purchase. All right, they want a little bit more information. You don't have to do a laundry list. Just give them some basics so you can help them out because they're aching for that. Remember, these are also people, because they're so busy, they're a group of food assemblers, okay? They're not cooks. They need it easy. So the more you can help them out in this arena, the better you are for your business, and you help that customer, and then they'll be back because they're not getting that help in other places.
So I've been talking to convenience retailers about healthy for the last 5-6 years as we try to get some initiatives going at the association. 2 comments I've received repeatedly. I'd like to get your perspective on it. One is, John, I'm not going to cannibalize my core categories of the food that most of my customers want to buy by swapping out and bringing in more nutritious stuff that doesn't sell. 2, when you start talking about healthy, so many people immediately start thinking fresh, and the waste of unsold fresh product is a major concern for retailers. From what you've been looking at, how do you respond to those concerns?
Well, regarding cannibalization, it was very clear to us in the work we've done with NACS that you really have 2 very important constituencies that are customers. One is the core group. And the core group, 90+% of the sales are coming from your basics. It's beer, it's salty snacks, some liquor, sodas, down the list. All right. They're driving the basics. On the other hand, they're coming in very quickly. They're not buying 15 items. All right. They know what they want, and they're paying the bills. So that's the good news. That's why they're important. This fence sitter type who's caring more about healthier, again, in the broadest definition of the term, they're there, and basically they've been kind of ignored when you think about it. All right, they've been ignored by the channels. So now is the time when you can come in and get them to purchase incremental items, alternative snacks, alternative beverages, things that your core user is not looking for and doesn't really care about. So you don't have a stealing going on of volume. You have complementarity. And don't forget that, again, these alternative kinds of items are the ones that are growing double digits. So again, to me, classic win-win. It's not an either-or proposition where you have to totally overturn your business model. This is a growth element on top of the core business model, which is terrific. So that's relative to that issue. Secondly, the notion of healthy equals fresh. There is that perception, and that's why I don't spend a lot of time saying we have to go, quote, healthy. I think that's almost going too far. Remember, the person that's driving this change, who wants the alternative beverages and snacks, et cetera, is somebody that just wants it a little better. They want to feel better about it for themselves. And again, since there's a lot of kids in these households, they want to feel better about what they're picking up for their kids. Now they can feel good about picking up a quick snack or something to drink for their young one that doesn't give them the guilt hit. And I think that's the space, that's the sweet spot here, rather than trying to be the perfect fresh vegetable. We've spruced up, everything's glistening from water. No, let the supermarkets and the Whole Foods focus on that. That's more of their sweet spot, or unsweet spot, perhaps. And I think then, because the need for convenience gets you away from trying to be the fresh purveyor. Now, that doesn't mean you don't have things like fresh bananas or apples there, especially I think there's a great opportunity at checkout where they're highly visible or in other visible locales, because they are looking for those kind of items, but you don't really have to go much deeper than that. I think it's important just to have those there because, again, they're in a hurry. They don't have time, so we're not worried about picking up lots of extra these items like vegetables. You don't need to do that. So I think, again, classic win-win for the channel.
Jeff, I think that's a great point, because so often we start talking about healthy options, in our industry, our members start thinking extremes. It's really not an extreme. It's a migration. It's a beginning of introduction of new alternatives, new options to our customers without completely turning our business model upside down.
Yeah, and exactly. And that was the third point. What Hank was just talking about was the third point in his recommendations to retailers, in that they're not looking, just particularly women with kids. John and I, we do an awful lot of surveys for the Fuels Institute and for NACS. And we ask people, did you come into the store for a drink or food? Which one was your primary reason for the visit? And overall, consumers say drink. They come inside the convenience store for a drink, primarily over food. Men are more likely to say food. Women are less likely to say, I'll phrase it differently, they're more likely to say drink. And then when you add on, do you have kids? Do you have kids with you? The percent that say drink go higher and higher and higher, which is telling us they either really like the convenience drinks offered, or they really want to see something better with food. And your third recommendation with your work with NACS was focus on this core customer group, because they're coming in your stores and it's a lost opportunity.
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. I mean, they're there. And the other thing we learned is that what we call their market basket, in other words, how much they spend per year in convenience stores, is actually higher than the core customer that you're accustomed to. So I think, again, this is the opportunity for you. You don't have to alienate the core. You can capture the new business, help them out by giving them information, make these kind of products more visible, and also work hard at making more of the items you offer, the alternative, better-for-you items you offer, very amenable to being consumed on the go, because they were very clear in telling us they're rushed. That's why they come to your place in the first place, and help them out with that. And I think you have a classic win-win.
You know, we've talked about this, Jeff, in the past. Marketing these products is a different skill set. So often, our industry focuses on buy one, get two free, buy two for $1.50, and usually hot dogs, something along those lines. This customer base is not really necessarily focused on the best deal. It has to be affordable. But if we start marketing these products based upon their value, based upon their experience, based upon their taste, I think it'd be a much more successful approach.
Yeah, you have to push taste, because this is a group that's unwilling to give up taste, unlike, let's call it, the hardcore health followers in the market. And, you can't get too wacky with price. You can't overcharge on this. They still care about the word you said, which is accurate, value. They want something for their money. They're willing to pay a little bit more. But again, they need these kind of products. Again, you have them in the store, which is battle number one. I mean, think of all the venues that would love to have a customer show up. Well, you have them there. The key is to optimize what you can do with them in the store, because they're looking for items that are going to be growth vehicles for you.
That's another big point you made, is the target customer here is not that health food zealot. So you're not going after the person who's protesting. You're going after the customer who just wants a little bit better. They're already your customer. How do you provide them? And that strategy from a marketing perspective for our industry, it's a critical distinction. You have to focus on, we're just providing our customer yet another option they're looking for. We're not trying to recruit the crazies down the street. They're fine there. If they come in, great. But what we want to do is maximize the experience of our core customers.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better. I mean, it's very simple. And again, these are the ones driving the bus of growth. And they're already coming to your stores.
Well, Hank, you certainly got our industry's attention. There was a cover story on your findings in our NACS magazine in our October issue. Very, very well received session at our show, and we will be working with you much more, because it's important to us and it's important to our customers. So for those of you listening, the Hudson Institute, well, I guess everybody would be listening, wouldn't they? Hudson Institute website, go check out some of Hank's work there. NACS has a variety of tools at nacsonline.com/refresh. We have Hank's report there. We have some slides. Please check it out. And until next week, Stay tuned because this is all about what matters to convenience stores and what matters to convenience store customers. That's why we call it Convenience Matters.
You've been listening to Convenience Matters, brought to you by NACS. For more information about the National Association of Convenience Stores, go to nacsonline.com.